Imagine the main game of an entire era, a game Europe had been playing for centuries. It was called the Knight's Battle. Its rules were fair and simple, like a punch to the face. You build a wall of steel. Your opponent builds the same wall. You meet, and you fight. Whose armor is stronger, whose spirit is firmer, whose sword is sharper, they take everything. All the glory, all the land, all the truth. A knight's entire life was training for this one moment. The weight of the armor, the force of the blow, the strength of the shield. It was a world where victory was measured in centimeters of steel and pounds of muscle. Then a shadow came from the east, and it brought with it a different game. Its rules were not written in stuffy forges or on the pages of chivalric romances. They were written by the endless steppe, by the cold wind, and by a completely different understanding of what strength meant. The first rule of the new game went like this. The most valuable resource is not the thickness of your armor, it is the distance to your enemy and the speed with which you can cover that distance without getting any closer. Put yourself in that knight's place. You see these riders. They have no plate armor, their bows look like toys compared to your two-handed sword, and you are sure they are savages. They don't even know how to fight properly. You fail to understand one thing. They have no intention of fighting your way. They came to play their own game, and they have already made the first move, while you are still raising your visor. Their game resembled not a boxing match, but a game of chess where every piece was a knight. An attack could come from any side at any moment, and the opening move in this chess game was not a pawn exchange. It was the quiet, almost weightless hiss of a released bowstring. But to play a game of speed and distance, you need a weapon that doesn't drain your strength, but conserves it. A weapon that works as an ally, not a burden. While you, the knight, spend the lion's share of your energy just carrying 30 kilograms of steel, the Mongol archer was free. Every calorie, every movement of his body was dedicated to one thing only, the next shot. His weapon was thought through to the smallest detail, like a race car. The bow, it's not just an arc, it's a battery. It stored the archer's power to release it at the perfect moment. And that strange ring on his thumb? That's not jewelry. It's a high-precision mechanism. It turned the human hand into part of the trigger. The archer didn't need to fight the string. He simply relaxed his finger, and the arrow flew perfectly, without a tremor, without error. This was autopilot. The man chose the target, and the technology did the rest. So while the knight, gasping for breath, prepared for one single charge, the Mongol archer was already releasing his 10th arrow. His game was a game of attrition, and Europe was not ready for such a game. So what were the rules of this new game? Let's look at the rule book. It wasn't written on paper. It was built into 3 simple components. First, the launcher, the composite bow. Forget the romantic image of a wooden stave. This was a biological supercapacitor, a sandwich of wood, sinew, and horn, each layer with a single job: store maximum energy in minimum space. Think of it not as a bow, but as a crossbow that you could reload with your bare hands. It was small enough to use on horseback, yet powerful enough to punch through armor at 200 meters. While a European archer needed a longbow as tall as a man to achieve similar force, the Mongol had this compact power pack. The first rule of the new game was already clear. Mobility is armor. If you can't be hit, you don't need to be heavy. Second, the interface, the thumb ring. In the European game, you pulled the string with 3 fingers. It was a grip of effort. In the Mongol game, you hooked it with one thumb, locked in a ring of stone or bone. It was a lock of control. This tiny device changed everything. It turned the release from a muscular spasm into a clean, mechanical click. No wobble, no wasted energy, just pure transfer of power from the bow's limbs to the arrow's shaft. It was the difference between slamming a door and pressing a button. One is violent and imprecise. The other is instant and exact. But a perfect shot is useless without the right ammunition. This brings us to the third component, the projectile, the arrow. In the old game, an arrow was just a pointed stick. In the new game, it was a specialized tool. A quiver was not just a container, it was a toolbox. Need to break a formation? Use heavy, armor-piercing bodkin points. Need to cause chaos and panic among infantry? Use wide, flesh-cutting broadheads. Need to send a signal across the roaring battlefield? Use whistling arrows, their bone tips screaming through the air. The first wireless communication system in warfare. Every piece was standardized, mass-produced, and purpose-built. While a European army hoped its blacksmiths could keep up, the Mongol army traveled with its own rolling industry. Carts loaded with tens of thousands of identical arrows, spare bowstrings, bundles of sinew. Their logistics were not an afterthought, they were the backbone. This was the second hidden rule of the game. Consistency wins. Your 10th shot should be as accurate and powerful as your first, and your 10,000th archer should have the same equipment as your first. The Mongols didn't just have better weapons, they had a system that guaranteed every weapon would perform exactly as intended, shot after shot, day after day. Now combine these components. A rider carrying this compact launcher with this precise interface and this selection of specialized projectiles. He is not a soldier. He is a mobile, intelligent artillery unit. But the true genius emerges when you multiply this unit, not by dozens, by thousands. This is where the game transcended physics and entered the realm of psychology. The first European reaction to the Mongol storm was not tactical, it was psychological. It was disbelief wrapped in myth. When your entire worldview is built on the idea that victory belongs to the strongest armor and the purest blood, defeat by nomadic horsemen is not just a loss, it's an impossibility. And the human mind has a powerful tool for dealing with the impossible. It weaves a story. So stories were woven. The invaders were not soldiers, they were demons. Their arrows were poisoned. They fought without honor, without God. They were a biblical plague, a force of nature, not an army one could analyze or understand. This was the first and safest line of defense. To demonize the enemy is to excuse your own failure. It preserves the old rules. Because if the Mongols were just men with better technology and tactics, then the entire European way of war, its chivalry, its castles, its social order, would be called into question. And that was a truth too terrifying to face. But myths cannot stop arrows forever. The second phase began, the attempt to copy. Kings and commanders issued simple orders, "Get me that bow." European craftsmen, the best in their world, examined captured Mongol weapons. They saw the layers, they understood the concept, and they failed. They could replicate the shape, but not the essence. Their copies were heavier, slower, less reliable. They missed the invisible parts of the system, the exact glue recipe, the years of curing, the precise balance of materials sourced from a continent they had never seen. They tried to copy the hardware without having the software or the factory that built it. It was like finding a smartphone in the Middle Ages. You could marvel at the glass screen, but you couldn't conceive of the global supply chain, the microchip fabrication, or the code running inside. The Mongols hadn't just invented a better bow, they had invented the entire ecosystem that produced it. And an ecosystem cannot be stolen, it must be grown from scratch over generations.
The third and most profound reaction was slow, painful adaptation. Some European armies learned. They hired more crossbowmen. They tried to create lighter, faster cavalry. They even adopted hit-and-run tactics. But these were patches on an old system. A suit of armor with a few added chains is still a suit of armor. The core philosophy remained unchanged: war as a decisive clash of heavy forces. The European military mind could add Mongol-inspired elements, but it could not rebuild itself into the seamless, distributed network that the Mongols were. And so, the adaptations were always half-measures, a hybrid that was neither a knightly charge nor a true storm of the steppe. It was enough to resist, sometimes to stall, but never to truly counter or replicate the original. In the end, the most effective European weapon against the Mongol system was not found on the battlefield. It was found in politics, in diplomacy, in the ancient arts of division and betrayal. They could not defeat the network in war, so they helped it collapse from within, through intrigue and succession crises. This may be the final ironic lesson. When faced with a new paradigm of overwhelming force, the old world's best answer was not to build a better sword, it was to become a better poison. So, where does this leave us? We began with the idea of a game with new, terrifying rules. The Mongols who played it are gone, their empire crumbled. So who won? Here is the paradox. Their state lost, but their idea won, and it changed warfare forever. You cannot look at a medieval battle after the 13th century in the same way. The ghost of the steppe is there. In the greater reliance on massed missile troops, in the grudging respect for mobility and feigned retreat, in the understanding that a battle could be decided before melee ever began, by logistics, by psychology, by sheer volume of fire. Europe did not become Mongolia, but it was forced to learn, to adapt, to hybridize. The Mongol game did not conquer the continent, but it permanently hacked its military consciousness. The age of the unquestioned heroic charge was over. A new, colder calculus had entered the room. Yet this brilliant system vanished. Why? It fell victim to its own perfection. The Mongol way was an ecosystem, finely tuned to a specific people, a specific landscape, a specific way of life. It was not easily exportable. You couldn't teach it to a French peasant in a year. It required a lifetime of symbiosis. It was the pinnacle of organic, high-touch warfare. And then came a low-tech revolution: gunpowder. It was crude, inaccurate, slow, but it was democratic. It required weeks of training, not decades. A musket did not care about the skill of the man holding it. It reduced the art of war to a simple chemical equation. Humanity faced a choice: continue down the path of deep personal mastery embodied by the Mongol archer, or embrace the path of scalable impersonal force. We chose the latter. We chose industry over art. The composite bow was not defeated. It was rendered obsolete by a shift in paradigm, from the craft of the individual to the output of the system. This is why the story of the Mongol bow is not just a history lesson. It is a blueprint, a pattern for how disruption works. First, a new player arrives, not to play your game better, but to change the game itself. Then comes the shock, the denial, the failed attempts to copy the surface. Then a painful, partial adaptation. And finally, absorption. The world changes, integrating the new rules, often after the original disruptor has faded. We see this pattern everywhere today, in digital startups that redefine entire industries, in cyber warfare where borders are meaningless, in the rise of artificial intelligence. New games are being invented all the time. The lesson of the steppe is not about building a thicker shield against arrows.
It is about the humility to ask, when faced with an unstoppable force, what game are they actually playing, and are we still on the right board? The Mongols are gone, but the question they posed echoes through the centuries. When the rules change, do you try to fight harder, or do you learn to think differently?